Hey everyone, Chuck here. Going to move into our fourth video here, and this starts to look at section B within module one, and we're looking at the idea of supply chain transformation strategy overview. So in this, excuse me, in this first video here, we're looking at a very broad look at what strategies are and the whole approach to strategies to transform. So you got to have strategies for that. If you think about what a strategy is, I've seen material from A.G. Lafley who said, hey, strategy for a business is where you're going to play, how you're going to win, what's your plan for getting there, which is a very nice way to help people understand it. In our case, it's the plan we're going to use to achieve sustainable long-term success. And it's also what's the plan in our case, because of transformation, what's going to be our plan and our strategy for using the resources to achieve this, this transformation that we're looking at. I needed 2 seconds to clear the throat there. Well, I apologize. Before we dive into this, I know I do it every time, and I appreciate you hanging in there when I say it every time, but I'm doing this as a way to help myself prepare for the exam by talking it out loud as if I'm teaching it, but also to remind you this is a Chuck opinion, not using ASCM material, and this is certainly not not ASCM blessed, because ASCM, of course, is a body of knowledge, or has a body of knowledge, and I don't want to step on their IP rights and that stuff. So it is an opinion piece, but got a number of topics that to cover here to help myself prep, lock it in better. Hopefully, it'll help you at the same time. Is a strategy, is a plan to use resources, and because we're looking at the transformation, what's going to be our plan to transform? And as you go through all of our material that we've got, you'll see that the book or the participant guide is just full of to-dos, if you want to call it, that we have to do. And in the resources, they've got a spreadsheet set up of a beginning basic implementation plan. And so what's our strategy to implement that plan? Generally, when you think about strategy, it's the key success factors, and that could be the characteristics of the products, what you and I are good at as a organization, what are those things we can do and accomplish that'll have the biggest success in the future, and hopefully it'll create a sustainable competitive advantage. So, it's the key factors, it's the plan for getting there, it's the actions we're going to take, or the book makes an interesting comment, the actions we choose not to take because it may not fit in with what we're trying to accomplish here. Okay. So part of a strategic plan also is how do we put together and how do we determine the actions to support the missions, the goal, the visions, the objectives of our company. And that strategic plan is going to help us articulate the direction of the investment of resources we're going to need over the long term to to be able to accomplish this transformation we're looking at. So there's both a strategy as a business. When we transform, what do we want our business to look like? That's certainly needed because we need to know, like we saw before, how we're going to get there, what's the gap, so we can put the plan together. But we also have to be thinking about what's the transformation strategy that we're going to run into, that we're going to utilize as we go forward. And we'll catch that in a couple seconds here. But I did want to mention the book goes into a couple small sections on market types and strategy types, and it seems to make sense to kind of lump those together. And we're talking about strategy as a business. Again, where are we going to play? How are we going to compete? And so the book talks about integrated. We can have a strategy of integrating others, either horizontally by purchasing and integrating competitors. It can also be vertically, where we may bring in and purchase a supplier or a customer or a distributor, so we have more control over the process. We've got we talk about it in many of our materials, the Ansoff product market growth matrix. So that's a approach we should look at for the different types of strategies out there. Porter's Five Forces framework gives us some understanding. How attractive is the industry? We can grow by expanding globally, as well as, I want to say, has it been 15, 20 years perhaps? The whole idea of a blue ocean strategy, which is saying, look for those open spots out there in the ocean where people are not playing. And that's our places where we can compete and put our stake in the ground on it. Another subset topic it talks about in this whole area of transformation strategies is some of the other frameworks that are out there. So I'll list some of them off here. I found it beneficial to jump out to the internet and look them up and read a little bit about it. It helped me understand more the consistent theme of what all these different approaches are looking at. So there was the Boston Consulting Group Growth Share Matrix. There was also product lifecycle analysis, product profiling, which for me is always fascinating because that goes back to the work of Terry Hill, but we can apply it in supply chains. The 4 Ps out of marketing, constraint analysis, business model operating canvas probably has come around again last 10, 15 years, but it's a real cool, neat way to help you frame visually and help you think through critically what your business model is going to look like. And so I would encourage you to look that one up. It's pretty cool. Evaluation matrices, SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And as you look at that, of course, you start to realize that, hey, our opportunities are where our competitors have their weaknesses. And our weaknesses become our threats to other competitors if they pick up on that. Integrated measurement model and the Kaplan-Norton strategy maps. Integrated measurement model looks at the balanced scorecard and making sure that all of our metrics kind of align with each other. The Kaplan-Norton strategy maps helps us visualize our strategies, as well as it looks like you can include the KPIs from the SCORE DS model to help yourselves out too. So a lot of subset topics within there. And again, keep in mind, think of this like pieces of a puzzle, I think, and it'll help us prepare for the test, is these are all pieces we're putting together to figure out that full strategy, both as a supply chain and also how we're going to transform ourselves. So real quick comment, it was just one sentence, but it's so powerful, as it says, a documented strategy is needed for proper supply chain design. How do you know what to design if you don't know what your strategy is going to be or your true north? Because you look at things like labor or capacity, and how you answer that's going to be different, whether you're trying to have a strategy of low cost or a cost leader or differentiated. In one case over here, you're not going to have any extra labor because that's costing you. Differentiated, if you're trying to compete on, being responsive, a little extra labor probably makes sense. Same question, different answers depending on what the strategy is. So it makes sense that we know where it's documented and we know where north is. Another comment in the material I found interesting is the strategy must be comprehensive and cover our competency areas. It typically doesn't do us any good to try to take on a strategy where we don't have the resources and the skills to be able to perform there. So unless we're starting out a new business, it certainly has to cover areas that we've got skills and resources in. Okay. Book also, we got about 4 more bullet points here. Makes the comment in the participant guide. I'll just kind of read this here real quick. A supply chain strategy needs to develop the following elements. Customer service goals. What are your competitive characteristics and attributes? How are you going to sell to the customer and what channels? What is your value chain? What are those aspects of supply chain activities that the customers were finding value in, willing to pay for? What's your model for operating? What's your asset footprint? What are you going to have for capital equipment and capital, or just capital expenditures for buildings and transportation? And are you going to own them or not? And where are you going to put it? And what products are going to be made or stored in this warehouse? So what's that footprint look like? Also mentions global, regional, and country model. Not every business is going to go global, but is part of the bigger conversation that says we're probably going to have different spans or sizes here in our business. So global might be statewide for you, and region might be cities, and country models might be even communities or counties within your areas. But there's different levels that we've got to model and make sure our supply chain covers all that. The participant guide also says, and I'm still struggling with this one a bit, it says the strategy and the components need to be stress tested. So I'm anticipating from what I understood, and this is the opinion piece, this is like piloting it out. And so we've got our ideas for strategies. We know what we're going to do. What are the components within there? We got to try them out. A, see if they work. B, if we can increase volumes and do more with them, will they still hold up as we grow the business? Nothing's tougher than a strategy or a supply chain or a process that breaks down because it's not able to handle the volume or the variety. Got to have our key performance indicators. We want to make sure that the metrics are promoting what we want, not necessarily today. Today is important, but if we're going to transform to what we want to be tomorrow, then our KPIs have to not reflect, but we have to choose KPIs that are going to allow us to measure the future state. And as we move from current to future state, we should see those KPIs improve because those KPIs are measuring where we want to be, not measuring where we are today. So we're always forward looking. And that's why at the beginning, we talked about the whole idea of reverse engineering. One other vital point too is you've seen it before. We measure things, we get actions based on what we measure. But with that is because we're trying to transform to a new direction, got to be an action plan that goes with that. Got to be able to have some targets that the metrics working towards. And with that action plan, we can have specific deliverables, projects that we are going to take on in this transformation that allow us to achieve where we want to be in the future. So we're pinpointing where we want to be in the future. We're coming up with metrics that are going to tell us our path and our journey to getting there. And we've got action plans using these frameworks and the tools we've briefly mentioned. They're going to be part of that process to transform our supply chain towards that direction and redoing our organization so that we can be part of this new future. And we've made a significant shift in our model so that we are able to compete in the future, I guess.